Drake Powell flew up the recruiting rankings his last 2 years of high school, and we all know about his defense. What else is he going to bring to the Tar Heels?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, joined by our good buddy, Pat Kilby, the coach, coming at us today. And you've joined us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. Big shout out to all you everydayers, as well as all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community. Glad you're all here. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sport stops sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Pack, the roster preview series rolls on yet again for the third summer in a row. Today we finish up the freshmen. We went through James Brown and Ian Jackson already, and today we move to Drake Powell, the in-state dude. And Mr. Pat Kilby, why don't you start us off where we always start, with a little bio blast on Drake Powell?
Yeah, so we've got Drake Powell, incoming freshman, position small forward from Pittsboro, North Carolina, in-state commit. Northwood High School, AAU team was Team CP3. He's coming to Carolina at 6'6", 195 pounds, 5-star recruit. His recruiting rankings, his consensus was 13. ESPN had him at 13, Rivals 14, 24/7 Sports at 11th, and On3 had him at 16th. He committed to Carolina on his 17th birthday, September 8th, 2022. And Carolina was the only place he ever took an official visit. So I think he, obviously growing up in the state and then having the connections that he has to Carolina, it was pretty clear that's where he wanted to be. You can hit Drake up on social media. His Twitter handle is @PowellXDrake. And then his Instagram handle is Drake Powell, 2 W's on the end, POWW.
He just really believes in that. It's a big pow. Pow, whoa, 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 whoa. It's like an engine starting or something. Okay, Mac, thank you for getting us going on Drake there. Here's the thing that I very vividly remember. When we first started hearing about Drake Powell in 2022, that would be his sophomore year, the notes were, all right, look, this dude is down, outside the top 50. He's a phenomenal defender. And, he can do some offensive things, but it's not awesome, right? It's fine. But his defense is good enough where it makes sense to go ahead and offer him. So, Pac, my question is, obviously, we've seen him skyrocket up the rankings. We'll talk about that in a minute. Do you think that Drake Powell will always be known for his defense first, or will that kind of even out? Will his offense kind of go up and above it? How do you see him projecting? And let's just stick to college. Let's not even look ahead to NBA.
Yeah, I do think his defense will be his calling card. And I just think that's how we'll recognize him. And it's a strong suit. And to me, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not to say that he won't be great offensively either. I think that he has all those tools. Certainly has some things that need to be added to his game in order for his offense to be mentioned right there alongside his defense. But I think we'll talk about Drake's defense in a similar fashion to like Leaky Black. Now, not to say that Drake will be like Leaky offensively, because I don't believe that to be.
You think he's got a higher offensive ceiling than Leaky had as a Tar Heel?
I do, yeah. He's just a little bit more smooth with the basketball, and he's already coming in as a better shooter than Leaky ever was at Carolina. So I trust Drake's offensive potential. I just know what he brings to the table defensively, between the mentality that he has, the God-given just skills and ability that he has. man, it's really kind of unmatched. He's, in my opinion, definitely the best incoming freshman defender in the country. And so I just think that's where he's going to, hang his hat, and it's how we're going to know him by how he plays his defense.
And it feels like these types of players often just get labeled as 3-and-D guys. It's like they were always known as a great defender, and then they add a 3-point shot and they're 3-and-D. To me, that feels reductionistic with Drake because there's so much else that he does. Pack, whether it's slashing or kind of filling out the stat sheet in a multitude of ways, a la like a Danny Green or a Theo Pinson or something like that. I don't want to resort to just saying, Drake Powell, he's a 3-and-D guy, because I feel like that's too pigeonholing. Agree or disagree on that?
No, I totally agree. And if you spent much time watching Drake, I mean, he's a really good slasher. He moves well off the ball, but he also has a sneaky good mid-range pull-up, and he can do some things in the mid-range. So right now, I don't know that I would even put 3-point shooting really anywhere in his game. Not to say that he can't do it.
It's just further down the list of his skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's further down that list. And so I think he's got a lot of things that he brings to the table. And he's just got such a high floor, but his ceiling is really high too. And so he's going to bring just a ton of things to the table for Carolina.
Yeah, that's really interesting about his ceiling, because it's like it almost feels like we haven't even really discovered it yet, because he's still unpacking what his offensive game is going to be. And I like what you said about the floor, because the defense can be there game in, game out, no matter what. And man, when you pair that with some of the other individual defenders the Tar Heels have, very excited about it. But I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with that. Pack, last week we talked about Ian Jackson and how hard it is to start at the top and then just stay at the top of the recruiting rankings. Drake's ascension in the rankings is equally as impressive to me, but for different reasons. Just 2 summers ago, like as of right now, 2 summers ago, he was 76th at 247 and shot all the way up. And now, as the class finished, he finished 11th at 247 specifically in this class, as you said just a little bit ago. Big picture, what does that tell us about Drake Powell and how he's just continued to add to his game?
Yeah, so I think, the people that do those rankings and they do the evaluations, they probably saw the same thing that Carolina staff saw, which was, wow, this kid doesn't really have bad games. He's consistent all the time. And that goes back to what we were talking about with the floor, for Drake. His floor is really high. He's never going to hurt you. He rebounds well. He's great defensively. He can guard a multitude of positions. He's good in transition. And then his offensive game, what you saw was he had all those things, and it was good enough for him to be 70th. And then his offensive game slowly started to creep along and catch up to the rest of his game. Therefore, he's climbing the rankings. And to me, that just shows the type of kid he is. He's working on his game. He's working on his craft. He's striving to be better. And then he was rewarded for that in the rankings.
And it says a lot to me, and you just alluded to this, about Coach Davis and the staff and their ability to identify these young men, even when they're not, top 15 guys right when they find them, to say, look, this is a dude that is going to continue to grow. And I know there's going to be some people that say, yeah, but he's a legacy kid. His dad played at Carolina, played baseball at Carolina. His mom's a Carolina graduate. Like, it was always obvious that he was going to come here. And to that, I would say, not so fast, or else Jaron Stevenson would be a Tar Heel today as well, right? Because he's a legacy guy too. And so I don't want to just assume that the Tar Heels were in on Drake Powell and got Drake Powell just because of his legacy. Now, it doesn't hurt things, but I just don't want to assume like, oh, this was a gimme. Carolina was always going to get him.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing to that equation there is just being a legacy doesn't mean you get to come play basketball at Carolina. Like, Carolina has to want you too. And the staff did a good job of figuring out, hey, this is a kid we want. And now, did we have a leg up in his recruiting because of the other things? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But we still had to go, our staff still had to go and want him and recruit him and land him. And it was clear that it was a perfect fit. He's exactly what Carolina's looking for, and Carolina's exactly what he's looking for. So it's a great fit overall.
Well, Drake Powell is going to bring that game to Chapel Hill this season. Obviously, he's already on campus. He's going to have some strengths, some things that set him apart already, but as is any young basketball player, he's got some stuff to work on as well. We're going to have unpack some of those things for us coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. I love sports. I never want them to stop. Unfortunately, today is one of the slowest sports days of the entire calendar year because it's the day after the All-Star game. There's no baseball games going. Everything else is done. Olympics haven't started yet. It's so sad. We need more games. But just because the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to right now, FanDuel still lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. How about some World Series winner odds as we get into the second half of the season? I mean, we're already into the second half in terms of games, but on the back end of the All-Star game. Pack Dodgers lead the way at plus 320. Then the Phillies plus 420. Yankees plus 550, Orioles plus 700, and the Braves at plus 800 to round out the top 5. So if you want to get in on that action, head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks so much for joining us on Locked On Tar Heels. Today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Lots of great shows around on the network. If you're getting ready for college football season, check out Locked On College Football, hosted by our guy Spencer McLaughlin. He does a great job. If you want to hear more about college basketball, check out Locked On College Basketball, hosted by yours truly and my friend Andy Patton every day, just like Locked On Tar Heels. Love to see you there. Pat Kilby, we're going to talk strengths and weaknesses of Drake Powell, but I want to feed you this line and get your response to it. This comes from a source very close to the program and says to me, quote, Drake Powell is the all caps real deal. Said he is a pro already, should be a super exciting year, end quote. Pack, you probably heard the show a couple weeks ago when Coach Rob had been at basketball camp, saw Drake Powell and said, I'm going to love this dude. He is just, there, as we talked about with the ceiling earlier, there's no lid to it. The ceiling is the roof, all that MJ talk. What is your response to hearing those things, Pat Kilby?
I actually totally agree. Now, I'm not in and around the program every day, so I probably not seeing the things that this person is seeing. But I'm telling you, from watching him play, I just feel like he's the most pro-ready basketball player that we've got on our team. And
really?
That doesn't necessarily, I do, yeah. I'm not saying he's ready to play in the NBA tomorrow.
Sure.
But I think he's certainly got things he can add to his game and work on. But, man, he's just got things that you can't teach and coach. And not only that, but he's a great kid. He's, he's a perfect fit in Chapel Hill. But, man, he's just got some just ridiculous intangibles, things you can't teach, things you can't coach that make him a really special prospect. And he fits the NBA mold right now. Everybody in the NBA is wanting length and height, and he's got it. He's 6'6". He's got the wingspan. He's got the athleticism. He can guard multiple positions. I think he's the best pro prospect in a Carolina uniform this year.
Wow. It's funny. I know he's a different position and a bit bigger, but I keep thinking about like Drew Holiday with him, of somebody that's just like, just the dude stud defender that you want on anybody, but gives you what you need offensively too. And I mean, Drew Holiday might be out here starting for Team USA in Paris this summer, Pack. And so I just think of stuff like that. So you mentioned all these intangibles, all these other things. Let's talk first about strengths for Drake. He will be able to play for the Tar Heels in college already because of what specific skill?
Well, I hate to keep harping on it, but his defense, and in particular, how he fits with our team.
What do you mean by that? Go deeper on that.
Yeah, well, it's just we're not the biggest team in the world. But Drake has some size to offer. He's got the length that we've talked about, the height. And so his ability to guard multiple positions is going to be really crucial for Carolina this year. But something else that stands out to me is his ability to rebound. He is a really good defensive rebounder. And I just think between his ability to guard and then his ability to rebound, you pair those two things together, and I mean, he's going to get on the floor for Carolina this year specifically because of those two things.
Interesting. Yeah, average 7.9 rebounds a game this year for Northwood. And, coming from that wing spot, man, that's you need that to get in. I love those points. Pack, you talked about the intangibles. As a coach, when you're watching a guy like Drake Powell, how do you notice those things, or what is it? Is there any more specificity you can give to that so that we're, for people that might not see it the same way you do, to look at it and say, yeah, sure, intangibles, I see it.
Yeah. So specifically for me, I think when a lot of us watch basketball, we watch the ball, right? Well, I try not to do that as much. I try to watch what goes on when they're not guarding the ball or when they don't have the ball in their hand. And see, that's when Drake really stands out. Defensively, he's always in the right spot. He jumps to the ball really well. It seems to be, even though he seems to be a shy kid, like as far as like in public, he seems to be a decent communicator. When I watch his film and stuff, his highlights, he does a good job of talking. But specifically offensively, and you'll notice this a lot, like with slashers, which I think Drake is right now. He's a slasher. He's really good at moving off the ball. Those are those like just nuances to the game that are intangibles that, you can't really teach. You just got to be able to read and react. And Drake does a really good job with that, moving off the ball, and just seems to have a high IQ. And it's, as much you can talk to somebody about these things until you're blue in the face, but he actually does a great job of implementing them and doing those things naturally. And that just makes him stand out to me.
Okay, so what about the flip side of it? Because as we've said, obviously, like every young basketball player, there are things to work on. If you were an opposing coach, you're John Shire. On your scouting report, how are you trying to exploit young Drake Powell?
Yeah, I have two concerns. Number one, how well does he handle the ball? I think that's an area of growth. He reminds me a lot of like, they're not the same player at all. I'm not making a player comparison, but Harrison Ingram. Harrison was really savvy and good with the ball in his hands, but sometimes he just had a struggle like maintaining possession of the basketball. And so I see that some with Drake. So he's going to have to get better at handling the ball and then being able to consistently stretch the floor with the way he shoots the three ball. I think that's the two things that stand out to me the most. And it's not, like I said, not to say he can't do either of those two things.
Sure.
Those just have to improve for him to play at a really high level.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's like, look, you do a lot of stuff well, but I got to find what is the weakest of those things right now. And if that's 3-point shooting, then I'm going to back off you a little bit and give you a little bit of room to shoot. We saw how that affected, like, for example, Elliot Cadeau last year. And so interesting point there, Pack. Do you see anything with Drake's shot, either positive or negative, that leads you to believe what type of 3-point shooter he will be long-term? Like, is he a guy that can hit 35%?
Oh, yeah. I think that he
on
can.
What, like 2-3 attempts a game, something like that?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I expect. Like, if he – and I'm not even saying that has to be this year, but at some point, preferably his sophomore year or junior, senior year, if he's still at Carolina, to be able to hit, on a 30%, 35% clip out of three-point shots a game. And, because that's, 1 out of 3, that's enough to be a threat. That's enough that the defense has to honor you. I don't ever expect it to be like his strong suit. I don't think we're ever going to look at Drake and say, oh, that's a catch and shoot guy. And I'm not so sure that we'll ever look at him and say, wow, we're going to give the ball to Drake in the clutch and he's going to go create a shot and get a bucket for us. Like, I don't know that that's his game, and it doesn't need to be. But if he can just catch and shoot at a consistent clip, then he's going to be in great shape.
All right. Lots more to talk about on Drake Powell. Will there be a sophomore year? There is growing buzz for Drake Powell as a 2025 NBA draft pick. We'll talk about that and other things that excite us about Drake Powell this season. All that coming up in just a second. Pack, there's been some growing buzz for Drake Powell as a just kind of guy that just, in the same way he's launched up the high school recruiting rankings, to do so on NBA draft boards. And it reminds me almost of the 18-19 team, if you'll allow me this, where Nasir Little coming in was like ranked third in the nation above some dude named Zion Williamson, funny enough, behind behind Cam Reddish and what's his butt that was number one for Duke. Can't think of his name.
I try to erase those guys out of my mind.
One of the one and dones. Anyway, it'll come to us here in a second. But it was Kobe White that just came rocketing up the elite score, and then he was the one that was the highest draft pick for the Tar Heels that year. I'm not saying that same thing's going to happen, but there is some of that parallel here. RJ Barrett just came to me. Some of that same thing where Ian has been the guy all along, similar to Nasir. But here comes Drake up, joining him at those high levels. Pack, do you think that Drake Powell is going to do enough, get enough playing time, all of those kind of things this year to where he's seen by the NBA as a first or second round draft pick?
I do, yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a lottery pick. He just has what the NBA is looking for. And sometimes that's what it's all about. It's not necessarily about, as we've seen many times before, are you dropping 30 points a game in college? If so, come play in the NBA. No, that's not necessarily the case. They're looking for a specific type of player. And especially in the NBA, I know we're not necessarily labeling Drake as this, but 3-and-D is what they're looking for. And he's really got that, or got the capability for that is probably a better way to say that. Yeah. And so I just think he fits what the NBA is looking for. And then, you pair what his body type is, the height and the length, with the skill set he has and the IQ he has. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him be a lottery pick. And I do think that he's going to get plenty of playing time. I think we're going to find it hard, or our coaching staff will find it hard to keep him off the floor this season.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go to both of those places. Let me first ask you just a very direct question. Do you think Drake Powell will play a sophomore year at North Carolina? And I don't mean that as opposed to transferring. I mean it as opposed to going to the NBA.
Selfishly, I would like to say I think he's going to play a sophomore year, but realistically, I don't think so.
Wow. Okay. Now let's go to that other place, because you started to talk about his role this year. This, as we know, is a very loaded backcourt for North Carolina. We expect RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau to start in the backcourt at the 2 and the 1, respectively. But then you've also got Seth Trimble. You've got Ian Jackson. You've got Cade Tyson. And you've got Drake Powell. Now, I know there's kind of some growing expectation of maybe Carolina plays a Drake Powell or a Cade Tyson at the 4. But I think Jae'lyn High is going to have something to say about that. I think others are going to have something to say about that as well. And so I'm just trying to wrap my brain around how and where he best fits with this team and roster in terms of role.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see how Coach Davis and the staff work this out, because there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle and there's a lot of talent. And like you just mentioned, Jae'lyn High might have something to say about it, which throws a big wrench into things. So it's going to be really intriguing, but the cream rises to the top, and Drake Powell is certainly the cream. So here's the thing about it too. Like, I don't know that I feel comfortable saying, even though I just said I think he's going to be a lottery pick, I don't know that I think he's going to start either, at least not early on. But here's what I will say.
Reed Shepard says hello. You don't have to start, apparently, to go that high.
Exactly. And here's the other thing about it. We're going to want Drake on the court when games are finishing. That's how I feel about him. Like, he might not start the game, but we're going to trust him to be on the court at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And
because he's very switchable defensively, right? It's not just guarding threes. Like in the same, like I'll go back to you made a bit of a Leaky Black comparison with Drake. I remember when Kihei Clark was still at Virginia, Coach Davis in his first year put Leaky Black on Kihei Clark. Virginia had nothing, absolutely nothing they could do because of that. I could see Coach Davis doing something like that with Drake Powell, and that's one of the things you love about him.
Absolutely, yeah. And just picture this with me since you brought it up. We got another one in Seth Trimble. So whenever it's, crunch time and we've got to get stops, how do you take Seth and Drake off the floor? I mean, those guys can really get after it defensively. They rebound. They're not going to really turn the ball over.
Yeah.
So it's one of those deals where I think Drake is going to be finishing the game regardless of whether or not he starts.
Yeah, and I don't know that I see him starting. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened here or there because of injury, or maybe just like, let's see what happens in a lineup where Drake starts. But man, because of his versatility, I think he's going to fit with any other four guys that you put him out there with. And that's encouraging to me. And it would be to me if I was Hubert Davis as well.
100%. Yeah.
Pack, anything else you want to say about Drake Powell before we wrap up all our talk about the freshman?
I'm really excited to watch him play. There's just been a lot of talk about him. Obviously, we're excited about, what he brings to the table, but now I'm kind of just to the point where I'm ready to see him on the court and see it in live action. So it's going to be really cool to watch his career.
All right, folks. So that wraps up the part of our preview series this summer where we're talking about the freshmen. Next week, Pack and I are going to move on to that Jae'lyn High young man that we just talked about a second ago to kick off the sophomore class. We'll do that next week. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, man, now's the time to do it. Make sure that you don't miss a single episode. Very easy to do. If you're on audio, just hit subscribe to wherever you're listening to this. If you're on YouTube, it's right down there in the bottom corner of the screen. We'd love to have you join us more regularly. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community, the link for that is in the show notes. And guess what? It's free to join. Come on, man. There are great conversations happening every day. Literally just yesterday, we were having all sorts of conversations about high school recruiting and other good things. We want to remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back with you tomorrow, but until then, peace.